Hello, everyone, and welcome to Center for Spiritual Living, Rogue Valley in Medford, Oregon. I'm Kimberly Hawkins, Spiritual Director and Senior Minister here, and I'm so grateful that you all decided to tune us in. We are a radically inclusive, loving community dedicated to teaching spiritual tools to transform personal lives and help make a world that works for everyone. If you happen to be tuning in for the first time, a special warm welcome. We honor you no matter where you happen to be on your personal spiritual journey. This morning, I'm going to turn things over to our musicians, Anton Miserak and Laura Berryhill, to prepare us for a time of upliftment and attunement and connection to the spirit within and to one another. Anton and Laura.
We're going to start with a rousing chant.
We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one. We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one. We are opening. We are opening. We are opening. We are opening. We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one. We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one. We are opening. We are opening. We are opening. We are opening. We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one. We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one. We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one. We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one.
Great version of that song. Thank you. How lovely. So one way we open up to the one is through prayer. So let's take a moment now to just take a breath. Hopefully not the first deep breath you've taken this week, but if so, let's just breathe together. And as I do just that, I recognize that one life, that luminous light, as the source of all creation. The mystery that we can begin to describe but never quite circumscribe. I know it as absolute love, as perfect peace, as exquisite order and harmony. I recognize it as beauty, as warmth, wholeness, abundance. When we look at the universe that it has created, we see the magnificence, the creativity, the love. And what I know about this one life is that it is everywhere present, all-knowing, can do all things. And it is the luminous light that lights my life, that lights each of our lives. It is that which animates us, supplies, supports, guides us when we are willing to listen, to hear its voice right within us. And I know that this power, whatever we call it, by whatever name, God, Spirit, the One, oh, I know that it is good and always good. And I know that it is the truth that reminds us that we're all connected because we're all made of God's stuff. So what I know about this service, this celebration together, is that it serves as a reminder to each of us of that truth, that we are godlings, that we are spiritual siblings. No matter what our station in life, the country in which we live, the political party to which we belong, we are one in God. And so I know that as we listen this morning together to the music, to the words, my intention is and my prayer is that we are uplifted and reminded of the truth with a capital T, that we are powerful and have within us the power to make this world the beautiful, connected, peaceful place that Spirit intended it to be. So with great gratitude to speak these words, with great gratitude to come together virtually as we are right now, I release my word into that heart of God, which always has one answer to any prayer, and that is, yes, my beloveds, it is done. And so we say together, and so it is. Amen. For our reading this morning, I've selected 3 quotes that speak to our topic, which is mindful action. So these are quotes that have to do with listening for divine guidance, because by listening and acting on divine guidance is how we manage mindful action. First, from St. John Vianney. When it's God who is speaking, the proper way to behave is to imitate someone who has an irresistible curiosity and who listens at keyholes. You must listen to everything that God says at the keyhole of your heart. From Echo Bodine in A Still Small Voice. When our head is guiding us, we think we know what's going on. But when we're guided by intuition, we know what's going on. And that knowing comes from a place within us that is connected to our source. Finally, from Albert Einstein. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. My intention this morning is for us to remember the gift. And I turn things back to Anton and Laura.
A song by Michael God.
I will make a quiet place within my heart, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord. I will make a quiet place within my mind, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know. I will make a quiet place within my life, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord. I will make a quiet place within my heart, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord. I will make a quiet place within my mind, and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord. Be still, my soul, be still. a quiet place within my life,
and I will wait upon the Lord, wait upon the Lord.
I will make a quiet place. I will make a quiet place.
One of my all-time favorite songs. Making a quiet place is indeed how we hear that still small voice, and indeed how we manage to be mindful. We're wrapping up a month-long topic about mindfulness. Last week I spoke about mindful speech. One of the set of questions we can ask ourselves before we open our mouths to say something is it necessary? Is it true? And is it kind? However, all of us have heard the expression, actions speak much louder than our words. So this morning we're going to talk about mindful action. How do we achieve mindful action? I love this quote, "What you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying." It's often attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson, but doing a little bit of research, I found that this is probably more what he said. Let us not look east and west for materials of conversation, but rest in presence and unity. In other words, let's not search all over for what we're going to talk about, but let's rest in presence and unity, which is really about what mindfulness is, being still. He goes on to say, don't say things. What you are stands over you the while and thunders so that I cannot hear what you say to the contrary. I love that quote because I think it speaks about being congruent by having our actions match our words, how important that is to being in integrity. I love the parable about a master who once asked his disciples, which is more important, wisdom or action? Unanimously, the disciples said, action, of course. Of what use is wisdom that does not show itself in action? But the master added, and of what use is action that proceeds from an unenlightened heart? Wow. So they're both important, wisdom and action. And how do we achieve an enlightened heart? The Buddhists talk quite a bit about that. So mindful action, I guess I would define it as being present in the moment, not carried away by runaway thoughts, emotions, and being aware and awake to our purpose when we act. John Kabat-Zinn said, the purpose of mindfulness is acting with clarity and intent. Acting with clarity, intent. In other words, we don't react, we act with awareness. We respond with awareness. I was touched reading the story in one of our books of the month this month, which is The Miracle of Mindfulness by the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. And it's a story, an account written by someone who was accompanying Nhat Hanh. His name is James Forrest. He was accompanying Nhat Hanh back in '68 when the monk was making a tour of this country during the Vietnam War to speak out against the devastation in his country and to speak for ending the war. Now, he was a Buddhist in a country that was mostly Christian, especially back then, but his gentleness and his intelligence, Forrest writes, won over audiences. They were just taken with him and tended to listen to him when he talked about the devastation for the peasants living in this country that was being bombed and just destroyed. After an hour with him, Forrest writes, one was haunted with the beauties of Vietnam and filled with anguish at America's military intervention there. But there was one evening, Nhat Hanh was speaking to a large Christian congregation at a church in St. Louis, when Nat-Han was met not with understanding, but with real acrimony by one very rageful American. Thich Nhat Hanh had been talking, and as always, he emphasized the need for Americans to stop their bombing and killing. There had been questions and answers when a large man stood up and spoke with searing scorn of the supposed compassion of this Mr. Han. If you care so much about your people, Mr. Han, why are you here? If you care so much about the people who are wounded, why don't you spend your time in your own country with them? There was a pall came over the auditorium, as you can imagine, and the writer who's making the account of the story said he felt furious himself. He was overwhelmed. But when the man finished, he looked around toward Thich Nhat Hanh in bewilderment. What could he say? What could anyone say at this point? The spirit of the war, he writes, had suddenly filled the room, and it seemed hard to breathe. There was silence for a bit, and then Nhat Hanh began to speak quietly, with deep calm, indeed with a sense of personal caring for the man who had just damned him. The words seemed like rain falling on fire. If you want the tree to grow, he said, it won't help to water the leaves. You have to water the roots. Many of the roots of the war are in your country. To help the people who are to be bombed, to try to protect them from this suffering, I have to come here. The atmosphere in the room was transformed. In the man's fury, we had experienced our own furies. We'd seen the world as through a bomb bay. In Nhat Hanh's response, we'd experienced an alternative possibility. A possibility here brought to Christians by a Buddhist and to Americans by an enemy, of overcoming hatred with love, of breaking the seemingly endless chain reaction of violence through human history. But after his response, the writer noticed Nhat Hanh whispering to the chairman, and he left the room. It was a cool, clear night, he wrote, when Nhat Hanh stood on the sidewalk beside the church parking lot. He was struggling for air, like someone who had been deeply underwater and who had barely managed to swim to the surface before gasping for breath. It was several minutes before I dared ask him how he was or what had happened. Nhat Hanh explained that the man's comments had been terribly upsetting to him. He'd wanted to respond with anger, so he'd made himself breathe deeply and very slowly in order to find a way to respond with calm and understanding. But the breathing had been too slow and too deep. Why not be angry with him, I asked. Even pacifists have a right to be angry. If it were just myself, yes, Nhat Hanh answered. But I am here to speak for the Vietnamese peasants. I have to show them what we can be at our best. A moment, the writer said, he never forgot. So think about mindful action, acting with purpose. That was exactly what Thich Nhat Hanh did that evening. I'm so struck by that because here's a man who is deeply, deeply mindful and in practice, and yet was triggered, felt anger, and was able in that moment to pause, to get still, to breathe, and manage to respond, not out of anger, not react, but to respond with love, with compassion, and with truth. Now, there's a bit of a paradox here when we talk about wanting to do mindful action, because mindful action requires periods of inaction, of non-doing. To quiet that mind, to quiet our emotions if need be, we need to spend a pause. This month, our theme is mindfulness for mavericks. And mavericks are people who don't follow the crowd, who don't necessarily do what is commonly done, who don't necessarily do what's expected, but who are able to think for themselves and act out of their own integrity and their own values. Not to choose, well, to choose consciously and with awareness, guided by that inner wisdom. So yeah, to do mindful actions, we need to pause, we need to practice in action. I'm struck by the fact that the words listen and silent have the same letters in them. So the Buddhist practice of being fully present, even with mundane daily tasks, I think is such a beautiful practice. Not only do they meditate on the cushion regularly, but tasks are done with complete mindfulness. I visited last year the Buddhist monastery in Mount Shasta, and during the tour, the monk who showed us around, we were in the dining hall, and he explained that the meals are taken in common. There are large tables with bench seats, but everyone eats in silence. Imagine. So we're not doing two tasks at once. We're not running all over the place looking for things to talk about, as Emerson wrote about. We're focused and aware, even as we eat. And how many of us, when we eat, I know I'm guilty of this, sometimes we're filling the fork with the next mouthful before we've even chewed what's in our mouth. So imagine, and I encourage us to think about practicing mindfulness this week while we eat. I know that would be a big step for me. It would be something. We tend to eat more healthfully then, too. Our nutrition tends to improve because we're not just shoving stuff down without thinking, without being aware, without being in the moment. The brilliant Lao Tzu, 2,500 years ago, said this: "Do you have patience to wait till your mud settles and the water to clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself?" Something I think Thich Nhat Hanh did in that moment in that church. He took time to wait till his mud settled. So being still, breathing, meditating, praying, all those things I think help us to be mindful. Even writing. Journaling, I know, is a practice that helps me just clear my head from the muddy thoughts. And there's another practice which I have seen, which I have done just a little, but I plan to do more, which is the practice of automatic writing. If we're confronted with a difficult decision or a difficult set of circumstances, to ask Spirit for guidance and to just write what comes, allowing, almost as if you're allowing God to take the pen and see what happens. It can be an interesting practice. Someone wrote, if social media is junk food for the brain, then meditation is like eating your vegetables. Someone else compared meditation to flossing the grooves in your brain just as we floss our teeth. And I love that. I mean, it's like, okay, if we have regular hygiene habits, most of us don't think about leaving the house to comb our hair if we have hair, or brush or floss our teeth. But how many of us think about leaving the house without meditating, without getting centered, without praying, without taking care of our mental and spiritual hygiene? Now, when we tune into divine guidance, when we get quiet and listen, that guidance can come in many, many forms. Sometimes we literally hear guidance, advice. Sometimes we get a visual image. I've even had little video clips kind of run in the mind's eye that have helped me. Sometimes we just sense, we just know that we know what we need to do. And in teaching about, I think this is such an important topic, to listen for guidance, to follow guidance, that I've taught workshops about it. And I came up with, because people often ask, how do I know if this is really divine guidance, the voice of God within, or how do I know if it's just, my monkey mind or my ego speaking? And I have come up with 4 ways that, for me at least, have helped me distinguish the difference. There are 4 S's. So divine guidance is usually spontaneous. You could say sudden. Either one works. It's spontaneous. In other words, divine guidance doesn't come when we're interviewing everybody about what we should do and going through mental machinations about which is the best course of action. It doesn't come when we're angsting and worrying. It comes when we get still, and not necessarily in the middle of meditation. It can come in the course of our normal day, but it comes in a flash. It just comes. So it's spontaneous. Divine guidance is usually succinct. It's short and sweet. Those are all S's. Choose one. It's succinct. It's not a long, rambling explanation. It's like, yes, go to the party. No, stay home. Turn right. Call that friend. It's just a brief bit of guidance. So it's spontaneous, it's succinct, it's supportive. Divine guidance is never going to tell you to harm someone else or say something nasty, nor is it going to put you down. It's not going to say, you dumb you know what, because it's the voice of God, it's the voice of love. So it is going to be something that is for the highest and best of you and anyone else concerned. It's spontaneous, it's succinct, it's supportive. And finally, divine guidance is steady, it's persistent, it will not let you go. One of the most amazing examples of that is a story that a friend of mine named Lisa told me. When Lisa was in high school, she was a good student. She was involved in student government, a class officer, on a lot of, clubs, and very dedicated. Yet in the middle of math class one day, she heard the guidance, go home now. And she thought, I can't go home. Where's that coming from? I can't go home. I can't skip class. I'm a student officer. I have to be a good example. But it would not let her go. The voice was persistent. It was steady. Go home now, Lisa. Go home now. So she did. She, as fast as she could, after class, got in her car, drove home. Now, when she got home, her brother's car, he was a little older and working, was parked outside the house. And she thought, I can't go in. I can't go in. I'll get in trouble. He'll tell mom and dad. And the voice said, go in. That's it. Go in now. So she followed the advice. She walked in. Her brother was sitting at the kitchen table writing something. Lisa said hi, proceeded into the rest of the house. As she passed her brother's bedroom door, she noticed a gun on the bed. It was her father's gun. He had unlocked it from the cabinet, and he was sitting writing his suicide note. She interrupted that, and as far as I know, her brother is still alive today. That's the power of following divine guidance. That's the power of mindful action. That's the power of doing what you know you're being guided to do, even when it doesn't look like that's convenient or good. Following divine guidance. I've told one of my stories, and I'll tell it again, one of the most beautiful examples I had of this. Because, when we get in that situation where we're just confused and we don't know what to do, that monkey mind chatter can take over, and we can worry and angst and get ourselves all worked up. When I was expecting my second child, I was a little less than 3 months along, and I was 35 years old. And at that age when, at least back then, they started to worry about chromosomal abnormalities. And the doctors at the time, I don't even know if they still do this test, but they were recommending an early test to just see if the baby was okay. But they warned me that they weren't sure whether the test might cause spontaneous miscarriages. Miscarriages usually happen in the first 3 months of pregnancy, so they couldn't tell. So here I was with medical professionals all agreeing that this was the best course of action in my case. And I'm thinking, I'm going to do something that might cause my baby to be miscarried. I was in agony. I was really confused and disturbed and didn't know what to do. It's interesting, isn't it? You've got your own set of morals and thoughts, and then medical professionals who we respect. I mean, I'm grateful for medical professionals. So that one night when I went to bed, in all this turmoil, I said a prayer. I literally said a prayer. I said, God, I am just so confused and worried. I don't know what to do. I need some help. And I heard a voice, clear as day. Kimberly, there's nothing wrong with this child. Don't worry. Baby, I think was the word. There's nothing wrong with this baby. Don't worry. And I had this sense of utter peace come over me. It was incredible. And I knew that was right guidance. I called the next morning. I canceled the appointment. I was no longer worried. And sure enough, when my son Tony was born, he was perfect. He was 8 pounds something and happy and healthy, perfect baby. So that's the kind of peace that can come about when we're able to make time to listen. I think we need to surrender to pay attention, and then to be willing to follow the advice that comes. And I think if we could learn to do that, and I speak to myself as well as to all of us, life could go so much more smoothly, so much more gently, so much more peacefully. And yet that ego gets in the way, doesn't it? So whereas advice from our ego, our monkey mind, is often controlling, disturbing, confused, anxious, guided action is peaceful, calm, certain, as I was that night. Now, this word guidance, it's kind of interesting. Picture the word guidance, if you will. Guide, G-U-I-D-A-N-C-E. So the first letter G, let's say that stands for God, followed by I and U. God and, let's see, U-I, sorry, followed by U-I. I got to be able to spell here. So it's God, you and I, God, you and I, and then the rest of the word is dance. So guidance is when God and I dance together. But the idea is I'm allowing God to take the lead. So just as if I'm dancing with a partner who's leading me, maybe with gentle pressure on my back or a little nudge with the hand and arm to go this direction or that direction. When we open to divine guidance, that's what happens. We are nudged gently and lovingly in the right direction. God, you and I dance. A blogger that I researched this week named Elisa Leone wrote this about this dichotomy between the ego mind, the monkey mind, and guidance. She said, it's as though the mind is split in two. One part is the Holy Spirit, or our inner guide, which is our direct link to the divine. The part is all about love. It's wise, calm, happy, at peace. Following that guidance cultivates those qualities in our lives. The other part is what A Course in Miracles calls the ego. Now, we need the ego just to survive the logistics of life, but we don't need it to get in the way of our connection with the divine, right? So she writes, the ego is all about fear and the negative emotions that stem from fear. It is frantic, insane, and chaotic. Can anybody relate? I can. And following its guidance cultivates those same qualities in our lives. So clearly the guidance we want to follow is that guidance of the Holy Spirit, also known as our communication link with the divine by whatever name we call it. Our founder Ernest Holmes called it intuition, which is that voice of God within. We might call it following our heart, following our inner knowing. And really what happens when we do that is we move from a place of darkness and confusion to a place of light, of enlightenment. It's so funny, this week I got this image, as I often do, when I thought about the talk. I was in Loreto on the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. And we were setting out on a trip in a panga, a boat, before dawn, coming out of the estuary into the Sea of Cortez. And it was the most exquisite time of day when the sun began to come up over the sea. It was just gorgeous. And I think the reason that image came to me today is that when we get still, that's what happens. The sun comes up, the light comes up, and all those dark places, all those cobwebs, all those places of confusion are lit up and become clear, and our path forward becomes clear. We move from darkness into light. Darkness is not an entity, you know. When the lights come on in a room, there is no more darkness. So I'm going to recommend this week that we all recommit to a practice of meditation. I know some of you are regular meditators, great. Some of us, I know I occasionally will fall away when things get really busy and I don't take the time in the morning. And I know for me, if I don't take the time in the morning, I probably don't. So let's remember to floss the brain. Let's remember to do our mental hygiene. Even 5 minutes can make a huge difference in how the day goes. And when we get quiet, when we're willing to pay attention, to surrender and be willing to follow guidance, it might come later in the day, not necessarily when we're meditating. And the more we follow that guidance, the more we open the door for the flow to come. I mean, let's face it, if you don't accept it, if someone doesn't appreciate a gift and follow and use it, you're not likely to give it again. I think the same is true for the divine. You know, we need to stay open and use the advice we're given. And then I guess the other advice I would have is to follow the loving advice we receive, to make sure we follow it. So meditating in the morning is like taking a mental shower, just releasing all the clutter, all the monkey mind chatter, and getting clear. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, our founder of Science of Mind, said, "Through faith, tie your mind back to the mind of God, and in action, live as though you were guided by a supreme intelligence." In your actions, live as though you were guided by a supreme intelligence. We are all guided by a supreme intelligence, if we care to be. So again, there are many voices we can listen to. There's one speaking from fear, one speaking from anger, one speaking as a victim. There's the righteous voice. I know I have that one, I'm embarrassed to say. You know, the one where we just think we're right and we want to tell somebody what for. There's the voice about wanting to be loved desperately or being jealous. There's the voice of our parents, the voice of our ego. And then there's the voice of divine guidance. God, you and I dance when we listen to that voice. The Bible calls it the still small voice. And I love this passage from Proverbs in the Old Testament. All who listen to me will live in peace, untroubled by fear or harm. That is what happens when we can practice mindful action, guided action. Now, while our words may reveal who we aspire to become, our actions define who we are. Our actions do indeed speak louder than our words. So just as mindful speech must come from a place of reverence for all people, someone even that we disagree with, mindful action must come from a reverence for all of life and for the planet itself. I'm going to close with this beautiful quote once again from the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. It's simply about mindfulness and reverence. Walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. Walk as though you are kissing the earth with your feet. So I'm going to invite us now in the spirit of practicing good spiritual mental hygiene. Let's floss our brains a bit, shall we? Let's floss the grooves in our brain. Let's just spend 5 minutes in meditation as Laura and Anton play their beautiful bowls for us. Let us turn within. Let us open that space for that still small voice to speak. Not expecting anything in the next 5 minutes, but knowing as we do this, we prepare a place. We make a quiet place and wait upon the Lord of our being, the God that speaks to us from within. How good it is. How good it is to be still, to make a quiet place. And when we do, we more easily sense, remember, know that presence that surrounds us always, that lives us, breathes us, guides us, whispers in our ear, shows us the way to go. That divine love intelligence. It birthed me, it birthed you. It birthed every sentient being on the planet. We are all imbued with that guidance system right within. And when we dance with it, we are peaceful. We are clear. And so my prayer, my affirmation for all of us this day is that we take the time to hear, to pay attention, to accept the gift of this present now moment, this present with full awareness and open-heartedness. That we take time to breathe as Thich Nhat Hanh did so that we might respond from an enlightened heart, remembering our oneness, remembering our divinity. And I speak my word knowing that as we commit to doing this, we create peace around the world. We create peace within our political system, peace in our neighborhoods, peace among countries. Perhaps most importantly, peace within our own hearts, which then translates to peace in all our relationships, both interpersonal and international. Saying a prayer for all of us right now at this time in history, that our leaders are guided by that still small voice, that we are each guided to take mindful action, whatever that might be, from whatever gifts we may possess, whatever particular interests and values we have, that we don't have to do it all. But if we can each do our piece of what we're here to do, we do indeed create a beautiful world as God intended it to be. We create a world that works for everyone, black, white, rich, poor, and that we create a system that honors all people's right to lead healthy, happy, abundant lives. It is so possible when we just get still and then act out of that knowing. So in gratitude for this time together, and gratitude for that being of love and light that just inhabits each of us, in gratitude for this philosophy called science of mind, and gratitude for all paths, knowing all paths lead to the one presence, that is God, that is spirit, that is divine intelligence. Call it the quantum consciousness if you will. We are one, we are one, we are one. Releasing this word, knowing it's heard, it is answered. We say together, and so it is. Amen. Big thank you to Anton and Laura. That is so beautiful. I don't know about you, but I sure feel more centered. So this is our time when we talk about another spiritual practice called sacred giving. I want to say a heartfelt thank you to so many of you who have continued to support us through this time of social distancing and COVID-19. And I want to encourage you, that practice of spiritual giving is to be mindful, to be aware of all the good that comes to us, and to be willing to share a portion of it to where we're spiritually fed. So if you're able, I encourage you to continue to support us. There are many ways you can do that, but let's just place our hands over our heart and say this affirmation. Divine love as me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate. As the Bible says, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And so it is. You can give by going to our website and hitting the donate button, mailing a check to CSL Rogue Valley, P.O. Box 1458, Medford, Oregon, 97501. You can call the 800 number on your screen, 675-7430. And thank you so much for a gift any size is so appreciated. A few announcements. We continue our morning spiritual practice calls at 9 a.m. If you'd like to receive our e-newsletter, which comes out every Wednesday, on our Facebook page, you'll notice sign up for email, or you can go to our website and email me directly, Rev Kimberly, at cslroguevalley.org. We have a big event coming up, I am so pleased to announce. 2 weeks from today, which is Sunday the 28th of June, on July 12th, we will be meeting in person, socially distanced, at Bear Creek Park in the amphitheater at Bear Creek Park in Medford. We are asking you and encouraging you to wear a mask so that we're protecting each other, to bring a long chair, to bring something to drink, and we will be monitoring social distancing, so family groups will be seated 7 feet apart. But please join us. Now, an important thing is because it's hot here in Southern Oregon this time of year, rather than starting our service at 10:30, we're going to start it at 9:30, an hour early. We also plan to live stream it, but you'll look for the live stream at 9:30 a.m. on Sunday, July 12th. I am so excited that we will be doing this and have a chance at least to see each other, if not to hug each other. So big thanks to all those who are making this possible. Our sound engineer, Tom Frederick, our video engineer, Bill Miner, and all our volunteers. So thank you, thank you, thank you. With this, we will go to our closing song with Anton and Laura.
A song by John Aston.
So let's remember this week that our actions speak louder than our words, and we indeed have each come to love, to serve, and remember. Blessings, everyone. Till next time. Namaste.